Hello everyone, my name is Spectrumile, and today we are back with a Speedbuild Sunday. Yes, today we are creating a beautiful, if I might say so myself, a beautiful holiday house, a holiday vacation house. It has, of course, you know, all the necessary things in a holiday house with the awkward seating, with a pool in the back actually even as well, and yeah, just some beautifulness to how everything works. I'm quite surprised myself with this one. I really wasn't certain on how I wanted to do things with this, and it just really worked out. I started to like realize that I could really just, you know, figure out how I wanted to do things, and this is one of my better builds, guys. I really enjoyed just creating this. I, of course, did what I always do. I started creating, like, I looked through the whole Pinterest section, of course, for, like, you know, homes for a certain amount of bedrooms, you know, that kind of stuff. Basically, trying to get a feel for what I wanted to do, and I was like, okay, sure, I want to make sure that I have, like, a bunch of these things already, like, figured out. I also realized that I wanted to, like, get all these roofs like uniform. One of these things that I wanted to do was like create something a little different, you know, create a little bit different sort of, you know, roof, where normally I use a roof to cover everything, and I was like, okay, well, this beautiful picture of a house that I got is like, it's not, you know, not that. And of course I'm still figuring out the colors and that kind of stuff, so things will definitely change from what you see right now on the roof, but it's basically just something very, it's different. It's different from what I normally build, and still it is with a lot of wood. When you guys look, if you guys are looking through my, you know, my builds, it's both my speed builds, but also before that, you know, there are a lot of things that how do I say it, quite enjoy the aesthetic of. One of the things is using a lot of wood. I was like, okay, how do I get this inclination to wood this much, right? I really wasn't certain on why I enjoyed it this much. But like in retrospect, I think it has to do with, you know, our holidays to the English countryside when I was like 14, 15, 16, or like around those ages. Basically, as a Dutch person, my parents really were like, okay, we want to go to to France, right? Where we always like just were camping and that kind of stuff. But basically, during what we have is like basically like a spring break sort of thing in May or in April. Like it's we call it a May holiday, but it's also, you know, not actually always in May that much. It's more so in the end of April, and yeah, we use those to go to England, to Cornwall, and we of course were put there in like the very cozy cottage houses, or like cottages in the English countryside, or the British countryside, I must add, I think. Yeah, I like basically, you know, I hated everything about them when I was younger, because they smelled horrible, and like, or at least I thought they smelled horrible, but apparently that's like a whole vibe for like these sort of houses. So and I really enjoyed it. But we also went like, we did a lot of like when we were on a holiday, whether it was with family or with friends or whatever, we really went to these little like bungalow parks, that kind of stuff, and I also always enjoyed the more or less the aesthetics of those wooden bungalow parks. Just really chilling. It smelled like wood. It smelled like pine. It was, you know, a little bit different from things. And I think in you know, respectively, as a late diagnosis autistic person, I'm like, you know, sort of like looking at it like, okay, yeah, well, those holidays were usually us really being, you know, in a bungalow, which was sort of like, you know, comfort, but also we were in the woods, you know, we were, it was still like very serene, a little to do. We even had like At one point, I believe we even went to a little bit of an island where we just basically had a bungalow at an island. It was beautiful. It was lovely. I'm not even sure where we were. Probably not even in England. We were somewhere else, I think. It was beautiful. We had to go there by like a little bit of a rowboat, so it was like we couldn't really leave the islands. It was easy for everybody involved, basically. But yeah, it was really enjoyable, and it's one of those things that I really like look back on right now. Like back in the day, it was tough, but right now I'm like looking at them with pretty like a good feeling, and I think it really enlarged or enlarged. I think it really created this sort of this vibe that I enjoyed about houses like this, where I was like, okay, I like, you know, this whole wooden style vibe. It's so much so that I have a like in my house. I have like you can see it right behind me, on the lower side. You know, there are like, I really enjoy like wood. I have a wooden. I mean, it looks like a wooden floor. It's not a wooden floor, but like the way that wood looks, really enjoy it. And I figured, okay, well, I'm gonna like use, of course, my my things a little bit here and there. I want to make sure that I add in everything that I can from the blueprint that I got from Pinterest. But I also, at one point, you see me start looking less and less at like what Pinterest is doing, and to what I wanted. Of course, you know, it's all not the same, but also struggling. You know, you see me sometimes just thinking about like what to do here. I also realized that I'm gonna record my face over the face recording, so you guys won't see me looking at Pinterest at all. This is something that I'm new that I'm gonna try and figure out. So I should really start looking at this camera right now. But I'm also looking at like what's happening on the screen. So it's a little bit of a vibe. But hey, we're learning, right? Learning in multiple things, like in multiple ways. In both the Sims, as in video editing, video creation, of course. But yeah, no, I really think, you know, the whole the enjoyment of wood styles basically is something that I think amounts to that. Just, you know, just beautiful wooden huts and houses that I stayed in as I was younger, for holidays and bungalows and that kind of stuff. So yeah, sometimes something for real that looks good. And when I was building this house, I was like looking at it, I was like, oh yeah, this reminds me, like, you know what the biggest issue is of these houses are that they, you know, they're really like, you can live there, right? But you don't really have like a proper, like, you don't really have a great kitchen, or you don't really have like, of course, don't have a computer room or something like that. And if you do, you probably like have an old computer with like shitty internet, or, you know, with basically, it all has the basic necessities for a human to live, and in a way that it feels like luxury, right? But it's also not luxury in the sense that you don't have everything that you normally want to have. So it's like you don't really have your own rooms. You don't really have your, you know, it's not really artistic. You can't really do everything that you normally would, and that's of course one of the great things about being on holiday, right? Where you do something where you have to like completely, I mean, change up your routine, figure out like a way to relax from your daily life, and find that relaxation in just a completely different way of living. And I think that this house, the way that I create this, I think it's really proper. I think it's really nice as how it gets there, because it really like starts with that thing. It starts with like having plenty of stuff to do, but like not as a whole, right? Where you can be there, you can live there, but it's not like a fun environment to be in the entire time, unless you're like, you know, I mean, you can of course read a good book there, but like if you want to do other things, you know, entertainment is going to be found elsewhere. So yeah, it's one of the things that I realized as we went. Yeah, so I think it's what I intended to have here as well, where I was like looking, okay, like how do I want to fit this in? Of course, I'm also looking at like the building plan for on Pinterest, where I was like, okay, how, like, what do they do? And one of the things that I did and I really enjoyed was like, okay, they added like a like a beautiful rug, or like they added like, I mean, everything was grayscale. So they added like a rug underneath the table. I was like, okay, but how does it work? And I really was like just thinking about, okay, well, what's gonna be the general vibe of this, right? What works? And I was like, okay, let's do a little bit more earthy tone as well with like things. I'm of course like, okay, how do we add a little bit more? How do I say it's like, you know, just something of a character, right? To all the places. One of the things that I really did enjoy is like pulling back like a little bit of a thing for a kitchen, you know, and I choose to not like just make enough room for the kitchen block, but I'm still like pretty happy with how things turn out in that regard. And now when I had the whole gray thing, I could like match it to other things as well. Could use it, and suddenly, you know, you have like this whole vibe that you can just properly deck out, and it just worked out. And I think it's one of the things that I really started to enjoy when I was building this. I was like, okay, I'm actually starting to do well with the whole interior design process in The Sims 4. And it's, you know, for those who have seen my first builds, that includes like my, you know, some other things. So that includes my beloved playthroughs where I was building my first house, like the shop, and like, you know, pip spots and potions. It was something that I really like, I had to work on for sure. I really always built from a perspective of min-maxing, and then now I'm like looking at this and like, okay, this is gonna be a family, or like a family's holiday vacation, maybe with 2 families even. When you count the amount of beds, the amount of double beds, it could also be like a perfect place for like, you know, like 4 young couples to just have their base of operations while they enjoy their things. And I even used a little bit of cheats here, not in terms of money, of course, because this is just a normal speed build. But I did use move objects on, where I was like, okay, I want to add this thing on the back on the back of this on the back of the wall and under the kitchen sink, and I was really like, yeah, I really should just really get it in there, and because it will give it that authentic vibe of like a very, you know, like a very basic kitchen in a very otherwise luxurious house, right? This is one of those things with these kitchens are usually like, okay, I create a kitchen, or you put a kitchen in because you want people to have the option to cook, but it's usually never used because people will go out to eat dinner. And you know, I turned off the cheat here again as well, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna just, I was like, okay, I want to make sure that it does work, that it is something that I can use properly. And I also noticed that I was about to place like a whole sink in a wall, and I was like, doesn't do it. So yeah, I you know, still building with cheats is something that I always feel like it's a risk, right? You could create something that just couldn't work at all, and that's what that's something that I don't like. To just like make something that doesn't work. I do enjoy that I'm like right now like thinking about, okay, what kind of clutter can I use? It's something that I was thinking more and more of, like how can I really like give this character? And it's one of the things that I think I talked about it in a last Speedbuild episode. Maybe I talked about it during the Speedbuild episode for the ranch, where I wanted to say like, okay, how do I, you know, make it look in use instead of making it, or how do I make it feel in use instead of it making it just look like it, you know, like giving it the character. And I think this is one of the things, and it helps that it's, you know, just a funny, simple home, where I'm like, yeah, this could definitely just work out. And it's one of the things that I do here, because usually these houses are a lot less into making this being feel used. It has to look like every single time that a new person comes in, it has to feel completely new, like it's their little house, their little home for just this little while, and they can, and you know, it's that clean that you can also leave it easily and never think about it again, right? Or never really like have a sort of a homesickness to these houses, because they're also in a sense where, you know, they're like perfect, but they're also in a sense just like not yours. You didn't make them, so it's like you didn't like create everything necessary for it. So it's one of those things that this type of housing really lends itself to. I of course go for my standard, you know, my standard vibe for my bathrooms, because I cannot deal with anything else. But I do, you know, try some different things, right? Where just like I'm like, okay, I wanna use this, I wanna do that. I didn't know anymore like how things worked in terms of placing them inside these closets. These are like very new things for me, because they are basically like fully for nothing more than, you know, aesthetics in The Sims 4. And I haven't used them before, or I used them before in like one of the speed builds, but I like to add them all together is like it's not something that I normally like feel comfortable with. And I find this sort of wood schematic that I can use. I'm like still not like entirely happy about the particular box that we're currently looking at. I feel like it's more of a like, okay, we need to add the space in. You can hang your clothes here, but I then of course proceeded to not use this at all anywhere else. So like in all the other bedrooms, there won't be a closet like this, and it's something that I in retrospect like a little bit like I'm unhappy about. But then, you know, I realize I have to style the bedrooms, and I have no clue what to do. So I do go back to like, okay, can I like figure out some things in the builder, right? In the whole idea of like the Sims 4, that team that has created these sort of like rooms, and they give me like a great options, honestly. I think, you know, if you look at it right now, you're like, okay, yeah, it definitely fits. And then I realized, okay, you know what I can do, instead of like making it monotonous, I can like really like create these sort of like vibes, these rooms that all have their different sort of like ideas in them, right? And I can like match them, of course, into the color scheme, but I can like really make things different. It has, of course, you know, it's a little bit of a, you know, creating a character for every single place that we're in, and it really works out. I think it really makes things like good to look at. I think it makes it busy, but not too busy. It makes it like proper. I was thinking maybe like adding a little bit of a half wall, or like a brazier, or like a barrier to split up the room and its entrance. Just couldn't find the space in all of these rooms to like really add it in. And it's one of the things that I really was like, it's not even struggling with. I was just like surprised at myself how okay I was with how these things were going. And of course I was using the templates from the Sims 4 team, which made things a lot easier. But I also didn't do that, for example, for the entire living space. And I, of course, looked at like the example that they given us, and I still like implemented it into the room in a sense that it was my style. I did enjoy like some things, and I was like, okay, do I add this like entirely like this or that? And I think, you know, after a while I did this. I'm still, you know, I'm rather happy with how the things go. I still have this idea that I want to give you guys like a tour when I'm in the speed build thing, and then I realize, hey, but what I'm missing is, you know, everything on the wall. and that is for sure what the problem is here. So yeah, no, I'm gonna of course take you guys into the build in a bit after the whole speed build thing is done, so I can get you guys a sense of, you know, how did it all turn out, even with all the decorations? How did it feel? How did it look? You know, what did I do with all the nooks and crannies of this build? And I'm just really happy about it. I'm really happy about the way that this just worked out and seemed, and I'm mostly happy not as much with the build, but as very much with how much I feel that I'm improving with this, you know, with building and with everything. So you know, you can really improve. You can really become better in, you know, something that you're naturally not inclined to. Like I never had this sort of feeling for like, okay, what does look well, what does not look well. But I think this does look well. So I hope you guys had a great time. If you did, please consider dropping a like and subscribe. And I hope to see you guys next time. Goodbye.